Welcome to Sparkling Harmonies. We are your hosts, François.
And Lily.
And we are two friends who don't quite listen to the same music or genres,
but who are here to talk to you about everything and anything music related. Yay!
Yay!
So, today.
Yes, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Today we've got somebody that you're going to introduce.
Yeah, it's our first guest, the first guest on the show. I hope he's doing well, not too stressed like me right now. So he's the current vocalist of two local bands, To Infinity and Fate in Falling, and he's the owner of Outbreak Production. And on top of that, he's having also a day job. So let's welcome Gabriel Jacob, founder of Outbreak Production.
Woohoo!
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Jared, you want to?
Thanks to you.
Do you have anything else to add to what we just said about you?
You summed it up pretty well. I mean, I do a lot with my time. I'm heavily involved in the music scene as an artist manager and booking agent and concert promoter and in bands myself.
Right.
And I do some graphic design stuff for bands and a little bit of everything, really. So,
well, a man of all trades we've got here. Yeah. So we're going to start with a little quick get to know your guest segment. So the first question we have for you: what was your first album? So this could be either a first album that you got or first album that had really big impact on you.
That's a very good question. So when I was younger, I had a whole bunch of random albums like Creed and Sean Desmond and like John Cena's rap album.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, a whole bunch of weird stuff, probably from my older sister. But the first album that I really connected with was probably Escape the Fates' Dying Is Your Latest Fashion album.
Oh, wow.
That album is, it's probably what got me into that whole post-hardcore emo genre of music and what got me started in bands.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because we actually met through one of your old bands back in, I'd like to say 2009, 2010, around those years, when you were playing almost monthly at the Underworld.
Yeah.
And you were opening for those kind of those types of bands that were going through Montreal.
Yeah, exactly. We were pretty much one of the only emo bands in Montreal at the time, so we had that was a really big advantage for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you had the balls to have all the haircuts too. I saw some pictures.
For sure, yeah. Long black hair and eyeliner and everything. We went all out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember it. So sometimes that you guys would stand out really when you just from your looks.
That was our goal. We always kind of said that if we want to get big, we sort of have to act big without being douchebags about it. But that was our mentality.
And so, what were we going to say?
That's fine.
So I was just going to go over to the next question. Your most memorable experience with music, what was that?
So speaking of Underworld, it was probably Chomp Chomp Attack's first show at Underworld when we opened for Black Veil Brides, Get Scared, Modern Day Escape, and Vampires Everywhere.
Wow.
So it was cool because it was our first show at that band and it was at our favorite venue. The venue was sold out. And on top of that, we were playing with bands that I had listened to for a while already. So I got the chance to play with bands that I loved and perform in front of a sold out venue at my favorite venue. So it was nothing really that compared to that moment.
That's a great start.
You mentioned that was your first show as Chomp Chomp Attack.
Yeah.
How did you manage to get on that show?
So we actually, myself and other members of the band, we each had two separate bands in the Montreal local scene, Buried by Tomorrow and A Hopeless Lie. And we had already played a whole lot of shows with those bands. And when we formed, we had some good contacts and we got lucky.
Oh, that's cool. And what was now a guilty pleasure for you musically?
So I definitely enjoy the occasional Nickelback, some Hilary Duff, and very much love DMX. I'm very into DMX for some reason.
Really? Yeah. And it's funny because one of our first episodes that we recorded and that we kind of tested on a couple of my friends, it was our first albums, and my first album happened to be Backstreet Boys. Nice. And François said that he listened to the Backstreet Boys, and the Backstreet Boys, one of one of their songs is always on his like most listened songs on Spotify. And one of my friends,
Incomplete.
Nice.
and one of my friends was saying how, whoa, he's got guts to admit that out loud. And we when we saw when you sent us your answer the other time, we were surprised that you had the guts to say that you listened to Hilary Duff.
I have no shame. I have no shame that I listen to Hilary Duff.
Has she done any
love
music recently? I honestly don't follow.
I think there was an album in 2015.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the last music that came out,
and
which was
so,
also good.
Yeah, I think I only probably listened to like her first album.
Fair enough. Most people.
Back in the day.
The Lizzie McGuire days.
Yeah, exactly.
That's way more than me. Don't think I can name one song. I'm not sure. Maybe I know some, but I don't know it's her. But I can't. On top of my head, I don't have.
You have some Spotify homework to do this weekend. This week.
That's not good for the suggestion.
And what's your artist of the moment right now?
Right now, I've actually been trying to listen to a lot of local bands. So I've been kind of every wave of quarantine, I've been posting that I'm going to be putting together a local artist Spotify playlist. And it's just what I play while I work throughout the day. Right. So a couple of the bands I listen to the most on those playlists, I guess, would be Ocean Drive, which is like a hardcore metalcore band, Call It Home, Emborn Drive, which is more pop punk. And for larger scale artists, I'd say a lot of Pierce the Veil and Sleeping with Sirens. I've been getting back into that lately.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I feel like a lot of people, either they're discovering new music through quarantine and through this whole pandemic, or they are going back into what they were listening to a long time ago. They're rediscovering old classics of theirs.
For sure.
And what would be your song or songs of the moment right now? It can be from any of those artists or somebody else.
Right now, it's probably Be the Same by the band Point North.
Okay.
They're a really good pop punk band. They just got signed a little while ago, and I can't stop listening to that one song on repeat, and especially in the car.
Okay, well, that's definitely something that I'll have to check out because that's the type of music that I like.
Me too.
Perfect.
And I'm really glad to hear some new pop punk band because I think we talked a bit before about that, but there's a little comeback of pop punk maybe, and that makes me happy. Sure. I have a soft spot.
So that Francois sees it more of like a guilty pleasure, but me, that's what I only listen to. That's like my jam.
Nice. And pop punk is never a guilty pleasure.
No,
pop punk is amazing. Perfect.
And Francois, what have you been listening to these days?
I've been listening to the new album of Benediction, so that's my thing. It's I would say it's like Slayer, but more on the death metal side. They are old men. That shows because you know I have long hair, but I have to admit the day I'd start to Cali, whatever, lost my hair.
Start balding.
Yeah, I will do something. I will shave them, but they are not ashamed. I think the guitar player have hair start maybe half of it, but that just. Well, I think refreshing because it's just raw stuff. There's no technical stuff. There's no like polyharmony or whatever. It's just 5 guys rocking out, and I enjoy it for the last week.
Well, I mean, that's what's the most important, right? For me, I've been listening to BTS. So we've talked about this a lot because just because I'm currently in love with a Korean pop rock band, and I'm always joking about how BTS, you know, they're good, but I never got into them as much, and how I don't want to be attacked by their fans because of that. But recently, I stumbled upon a few clips from their live streaming concert there that was recent, and that was very impressive. So I started to listen a little bit more to them right now.
Nice.
And so now we're going to get into some more serious questions. So what made you start your own booking company?
So I've kind of always been involved in the music industry, you know, starting off, you know, as a concert goer and then as an artist. And then I started working for some smaller booking agencies, helping out with running the door, pushing tickets, finding bands, designing
Mhm.
posters. And after all that time, I was just like, what do I do with all this experience I've gained?
Right.
Like I had taken a few years off from the music scene for a while, just to kind of clear my head. And when I came back, I'm like, I have so much of this knowledge that are just going to waste.
Yeah.
And there's so many bands that need to be booked, that need some help.
Mhm.
So my goal was really to take all the good and the bad that I learned and try to bring something positive to the Montreal music scene and give bands a chance to play with touring bands or to do little local showcases
Mhm.
and give them the opportunity to play in front of a crowd and pay them fairly, because that
Yeah.
was a big thing that in my day that it was a pain. It was, you'd have to bust your butt to sell a ton of tickets and you'd barely get paid at the end of the night. So that was something
Right.
I always felt strongly about, is to fairly pay the artists. Even if the show didn't do well, the artist would always get a
Yeah.
little
I
something.
like
That's
what I
great.
hear. Because I always heard like the horror stories, like you said, like, oh, you have to sell, I don't know, like 2,000 tickets, whatever, if you want to have your place on the stage or whatever. It's always like, but I don't know if it's still pay to play, but I always hate that. I understand it, but it's like a pain to deal with.
For
Yeah.
sure. And I
Well,
totally get that.
what I would notice from back in the underworld days was sometimes the local bands would not, like, quote unquote, lure all their friends to the show, but then their friends would only stay for that band. And then the venue
Yeah.
would empty out and fill up with the next local band's friends and then empty out again. And then at the end of the night, when the actual touring band was left, there was probably like 20 people left or 10 people left.
Yeah, unfortunately, that hasn't changed either.
No.
So when I have smaller touring bands come through, what I try to do is always put a local before and after them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good tactic.
Oh, that's nice. That's a creative idea.
Yeah, I try to keep people in the room as much as I can, and
Right.
make it work for everyone. And they don't mind not headlining, right? They understand that they're a smaller touring band, and that they'd rather play in front of people than have that headlining
Mhm.
spot.
Right. And so you do this right now on top of a day job, right?
Yeah.
So how do you manage? Where do you find the time?
So I've been working a day job for as long as I can remember, since my early 20s, but I just do 8 to 5 day job, and then I use my evenings to contact bands and to get stuff booked. And it's just, I like keeping busy, and I'm very passionate about the music industry and the
Right.
Montreal music scene. So it's worth the time. Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes I lose money at shows. Sometimes I'm tired. Sometimes shows go until 1 a.m. and I get home and I have to go to work the next day.
Right.
But it's all worth it. When you have a good show and you get to meet bands from all over, it makes it worth it.
And speaking of the Montreal scene, how was the Montreal scene before the pandemic?
I would be lying if I said it was amazing.
Right.
Like we just talked about, there was very much still that whole people will just come for their friends and then leave.
Right.
There were also another big issue, I think, is that there were so many shows competing with each other, which is one of those problems that's good and bad, because people have a lot of shows to choose from, but then bands will show up, they'll try to sell tickets for the show and get their friends to come out, and they'll be like, oh, I already have this or this or this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it caused a lot of issues, and not only for fans, just even with promoters. Sometimes we'd have to message each other and be like, oh, do you have a show this night, because I just got this tour offer, but I don't want it to compete. And he'll be like, yeah, I do,
Right.
but it's not the same genre, I'll go for it. So it was
Oh,
a
wow.
lot of communication with others, and a
But
lot of people think that promoters are competing, but a lot of us are really like tight knit and try to help each other out.
yeah, see, I'm surprised that you say that, and I'm very happy that you guys talk to each other like that, because it could be a competitive area, where everybody will just want, well, no, we don't want you to do your show because we want everybody to come to ours. But the reality is, if it's not the same genre, you're not competing really at all.
No, exactly. So, I mean, there obviously is some small element of competition. Everyone wants to be the best,
Right.
and that's normal. But it's been a really great experience being able to work with promoters, especially promoters that used to book my band before, and now I'm working alongside them and even co-producing shows with them sometimes and working together on an event.
Right. And so back when I was more into the smaller shows and smaller bands, I know the main venues were Underworld. There was also Café Leco. The one that I forgot on Saint Laurent.
I just want you. I just want to hear licks from your mouth, but I'm pretty sure you never went there.
Nope. But so what are the small venues or the small and medium sized venues now?
Yeah. So one of the ones that I book a lot at is Piranha Bar. That's a really popular one for kind of that same size as Underworld, I would say. It's very similar vibe.
Is it the
There's
same
also
size? I felt like Piranha Bar was so small.
they
Yeah,
they
it's pretty
renovated a
small.
few years. They renovated a few
Oh,
years
okay.
ago. I don't know the
Okay.
last time you guys went, but they had
Really
renovated a
long
few
time
years ago.
ago.
Now the capacity now is about 270.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's a little smaller than Underworld, but it's gotten a lot
But
bigger.
still.
The stage is a lot nicer than it used to be. It definitely took a big step up when they renovated.
Okay, so you do a lot of Piranha Bar, and where else?
There's a Polo, La Vitrola, but La Vitrola actually just shut down as well a couple months ago.
Really?
Yeah, many venues closed like in the last 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've booked at Brasserie Beaubien, Atomic Cafe, a little bit everywhere, but usually my go-tos were Piranha Bar, Petit Campus, and
Right.
La Vitrola and Casa del Popolo.
That's true, because Piranha Bar, the it's very accessible as well because it's right downtown.
Yeah.
But it's sad that there's so many venues that are closing down or aren't sure that they're going to survive through all this.
For sure.
And-
I know, sorry.
No,
I know
no.
that Casa del Popolo actually is still holding on, but right now they've actually removed the stage
Oh,
from the room,
really?
and they're using their space, at least last I heard, they're using their space to sell products, and I think they're selling like local products from people in Quebec and Montreal. So they're doing something
wow.
positive with the space at least, but it's
Right.
sad to hear the stage is gone.
Yeah. And so that kind of brings us into the main subject today, which is COVID-19 and how everything has really changed. So how is everything going with you with this whole situation? Has it changed the way you work at all, or?
Yeah, it's definitely been a big game changer for a lot of us. Obviously, all the shows I had booked, which was about maybe 15 at the time, maybe 20, like everything fell through.
Yeah.
We were taking it really like week by week, holding on for hope that things would get better and things would improve. But at a certain point, we were just like, all right, we're dropping everything. It's not worth it. Like even if we
Right.
are allowed to do some, like people can, it's not worth people's safety at a certain point, obviously. So it's definitely changed a lot. And right now, a lot of the work we're doing is essentially just communicating with tour managers, seeing what their plans are going to be, updating our contacts, and the same with them. I get a lot of emails from tour booking agents that are just looking to update contacts right now, preparing for when things are going to be back to normal, hopefully.
Right. So no, go ahead,
can I jump in?
François. Yeah.
So is that mean that everyone rescheduling or canceling, or it's everything is on hold and you wait till the wave pass?
Yeah, everything that I had for myself personally was canceled except for maybe 2-3 shows that they're trying to reschedule for 2021. And other than that, most bands are kind of just on hold, especially the smaller ones that aren't on a label or have big tour booking agents or artist representation. They're kind of on hold, just waiting for things to be back to normal to be able to start touring again.
So I'm guessing there's not really any scheduling even for next year right now, right?
I have something for September 2021 and I think April 2021. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's
It's
what
a
I
long
have right
shot.
now. Like, exactly. We're gonna see what happens. We're holding on for hope that it'll work, but who knows?
And so, do you personally think there's still a chance of seeing any bands from abroad in the next year?
I think maybe a lot of the bigger, more like Stadium, Club Soda, Metropolis type bands may have a chance to come through again. Bands at that level, because they can, to a certain extent, afford to lower the capacity of the venue, and those promoters and venues can still pay a lot of the artists, even if there's increased costs. So I do think those larger bands, yes, probably still in a little while, but I do think it's possible. For the smaller bands, I think it's definitely going to be tough. They're going to have to compete with those shows, and ticket costs are likely going to go up, and people are going to invest in those bigger shows that they want to go to because they've missed out on shows for so long and might not have money for local shows. That even those shows will probably be more expensive.
Yeah, but you mentioned the big stadiums and all that, and I remember So this was really at the beginning in April, May, when there was an article that I forgot who came out with, but that said that maybe, you know, the big stadium shows, when you buy your ticket, you're essentially buying your ticket and like the 3 tickets around you to make sure that
True.
that there's the social distancing element. But then that also implies that you're paying for 4 tickets for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. That's it's going to be tough. That's why people are going to really have to be selective with the shows they want to go
Right.
to, and artists will never really have the same crowd that they've had before that they used to have.
Yeah. And do you think actual tours and everything are still going to be a thing, or do you think that they're going to adapt and change their ways?
I mean, realistically, I think what would be the easiest to kind of kickstart again would be outdoor festivals.
Right.
You know, they can a lot easier social distance, and obviously they still have to pay for the space, but it's just probably going to be easier to manage, and it's going to be less demanding on artists as well, having to travel, you know, 30, 40, 50 days sometimes. So I think that might be what comes first, but I do think tours will keep happening. I think it's still a big part of artists' livelihood, and I think they're all itching to get back on the road and play in front of crowds. So it might take a while, but I don't think that'll ever go away. And I think the same kind of tour formula we see now is still going to be around.
Yeah. Well, there's been a few shows now that have been like drive-in.
True. Yeah. Which is a really cool concept. It's I mean, they charge per car, so if you can fill your car with enough people, it's not too expensive.
Yeah, or rent a big van.
There you go. You make a day out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And what do you think of online streaming, the online streaming type shows?
I think it's a good initiative. I've personally never really got into it, whether it be wanting to stream my shows or just buying a ticket for a live stream show.
Right.
I feel if anything, for me personally, it would, because I was at shows almost every night, whether I was going to them or working at them, I feel like it would make me miss it more than anything. I feel like I would see a band playing in front of an empty venue and I'd be like, wow, this just upsets me. Like,
yeah.
And it's a great initiative, and I'm happy they're doing it for the people that want to watch it, and I hope they're successful. It's just not something that's really been for me.
I'm with you on that. I told Lily I was missing the sweaty people and all the beer drenching and everything.
Oh, yes.
Well, I mean, personally, for me too, like I actually saw a few of them, and it really made me miss it, but I was happy to see them. But as someone who now usually tends to stay in the back at shows, it made me miss being front row surrounded by sweaty people and afraid of getting smacked in the head. That's how much I miss the shows right now.
It's probably the most disgusting special feeling in the world.
And do you think that online streaming shows, is this something that is going to continue past the pandemic?
I think for a little while, probably, but I think eventually people are going to kind of not get annoyed of it, but they'll be over it. I think once shows are back, people will just be too excited to get back out there, and people will probably still try to keep streaming, but the numbers will probably go down and it'll come to a halt. Maybe they'll do more streaming for like special events or stuff like that, but I don't think it'll be as prominent as it is now.
Because we were discussing how it could be an option for, let's say, like each tour, they would have one date that they would also stream, just so that, you know, not bands all, you know, I feel like in Montreal, my friends and I are always complaining that all the bands skip us. So we always have to either go to, you know, Burlington, Toronto, or, you know, anywhere nearby. But maybe having a streaming show, you know, it's now that we're older, it's harder to take days off work and to plan and everything. So maybe that would be our option instead.
For sure. I think that would be a good idea. I mean, they have the whole stage is set up already, right? They have everything they need to play. They're still getting paid for the night. The crowd still gets to enjoy it. And then more people get to log in and have a good time as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I feel like for bands, it's also, they're reaching out to more, and they have a potential, I guess, to make more money also, especially if they're just streaming a show in front of people already.
Yeah.
It's just bringing in extra ticket sales for them.
Definitely.
And do you think this whole experience is going to change how your business works in the future, or how you are going to go be as a concert goer as well?
I hope not. I really enjoyed how things are going, especially near the end. Like things were going really great. If anything, maybe I'll just, you know, I'll continue with the whole hand sanitizer thing and giving
Right.
people masks, even if it's not a requirement, so that everyone feels safe and comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I'm going to do my best to bring it back to what it was as long as I
Yeah.
can and as long as it's allowed.
Yeah. No, it's hard right now because I feel like nobody knows how we're going to get out of this and when we're going to get out of this and what's it going to be like after.
For
So if
sure.
it
I actually went. Piranha Bar had a few shows
did it
for that short period where it was allowed,
right.
and I helped out at a couple of the events, just helping with the door and organization. And it was definitely weird. Like there's a big plexiglass in front of the stage so that bands don't have to wear their masks.
Oh,
Even
really?
even on stage, the artists have to be socially distanced. We had to seat people, so instead of holding 270 people, there was 39 seats, I believe, available in the venue.
Oh, that's
Wow.
not much.
Yeah,
No.
and instead of just going to the bar, walking around, everyone had to be seated the whole night. They changed it to table service, so the bartender would come see you, so that you wouldn't have to get up and walk around. So it was
Wow.
definitely a really different vibe and very weird to see. And as much as it was a cool initiative, I mean, it's not the same.
Yeah. But is it kind of a thing where a situation where it's better than nothing? Right.
Yeah, I think it helped. I think it gave people a nice little dose of the local scene, and it got them going out again, and you know, seeing those bands that they've missed for a little while. But I think
Right.
it can only go so far. It'll never replace what it used to be. But I think you're right. It is a little something, and it was probably better than nothing for the time
Yeah.
being.
And so, speaking of like smaller shows and smaller bands, do you think smaller bands have a chance of kind of surviving this as well?
I think it's going to be tough. I know we kind of touched on it earlier. A lot of the pricing is probably going to change with venue capacities going down and artists needing to raise their price.
Right.
So it's probably either going to be where I see it two ways. Either people are going to invest their money only on those bigger shows that are a little more expensive and not be able to afford local shows,
Mm-hmm.
or they'll go to less big shows and they'll have money to go to go to more of their friends' shows.
Right.
I'm hoping that it's the second option and more local bands get people to come out.
Yeah.
There'll definitely always be a place for local bands. They'll just maybe have to push a little harder to get their tickets out there, because
Right.
even now those Piranha Bar shows, local shows were usually $10, and now they were $15-$20. And
Already.
yeah, so we're already seeing that kind of impact with the ticket prices. So
Yeah, I've read. I didn't read. I think that was a video. A guy explained a bit like what will be the beginning of the new era of shows, and he was saying, and mostly that the smaller band will have the first step because they're smaller, they're closer, and they still have a day job, so they can maybe take the hit. But
Right.
after that, maybe the bigger band will just
Take over.
grab it. Yeah, take over and grab everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds about right, unfortunately.
And now going past the COVID subject, and let's get into something maybe a little bit lighter.
Yeah, and that's where I came in.
Now go ahead, Francois. You could ask your artist questions.
Yeah, my artist question.
Well, because this was your more lighter artist side questions.
Yeah, but first of all, I like stories, so I want to hear a bit of like your side of a story or the stories you want to tell us. But what is your most memorable story regarding booking or show or artists that you had?
I would have to say for sure Danny Worsnop of Asking Alexandria.
Mm-hmm.
That was really cool because obviously, you know, as someone who grew up listening to emo, post-hardcore, screamo,
Right.
Asking Alexandria was always a big influence and always a band that I was like, wow, I would love to play with them.
Mm-hmm.
When the opportunity came to book Danny Worsnop, not just in Montreal, but I booked him in Montreal, Toronto, and Quebec City.
Oh, wow.
I did like a mini tour, and I did the dates with him. Like I went and I ran all the shows. It was an amazing experience, and just getting to talk to him and meet and hang out with him, like it was no big deal. Like,
Right.
17-year-old emo Gabe was super stoked. I mean, I was too. Me now was too, but that like my former emo Gabe was
Right.
just super excited, and
Yeah.
That's
it was a
nice.
great experience. Yeah, it was totally different too because he was playing like his solo country music,
Mm-hmm.
so
Oh,
it was
wow.
so weird to like see him play that. But it was great. He killed it, and it was a really fun experience. There was some hiccups, but overall it went really well.
Like usual, there has to be there. It can't just go smooth. It can't be
Exactly.
smooth sailing all the time.
Yeah.
And so, how did that come about? Did he contact you, or did he contact like a bunch of booking agents, or how did that happen?
Randomly enough, it was a friend of mine who saw on Instagram that he was looking to book shows
Oh,
for
really?
his solo project. And I was like, okay, sweet, I'll hit him up. I'm like, hey, I run Outbreak Productions. These are the bands I've booked. These are the venues I work at. I'd love a chance to work with you. I've followed your band for a while, and I think it would be a great opportunity for both of us. And about a week later, I got an email from his booking agent, and we started talking pricing. And then I was like, hey, if we're doing a weekend run, if you want to make this worth it, like I'll book you 2 more days. I'm like, and I even designed the flyer for the whole tour in the end.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
myself
nice.
and one of my friends who's a graphic designer, and myself who does graphic design. He was actually visiting from Israel, and we were on my couch, and I was like, I just got all the assets from Danny. I'm like, I'm gonna whip up a flyer for him. So we worked on it together, and I sent it back to them, and he's like, wow, we love this. Like, do you mind if we use this for the whole tour? And I was like, go for it,
Wow.
man.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of that whole experience was really kind of random and really cool.
Yeah. So,
Well,
but that mean the guy was up to the expectation.
Yeah.
You weren't disappointed to meet him. Like he was the great guy you think he was.
Yeah, I mean, he had moments where he did kind of like that rock star diva stuff, which I
But that's
wasn't
part of the game.
surprised. But he was always really cool with me, so I was fine with it.
that's the most important.
Yeah,
And
he
it's
was hiding
funny.
out backstage and stuff. So.
Oh, really? It's funny because now with the internet and social media, I feel like random occurrences like this are more likely to happen.
True.
Because,
Yeah, there's a
if
lot more opportunity for that.
exactly, if this was, 10 years ago, it would have been a lot more complicated for you to hit up somebody and say, oh, hey, I saw that you posted about this, and I'd like to take care of it, Whereas now people will just say, oh, on Instagram or on Twitter, I need this. Anybody know somebody who does this? And
That's
I
true.
think even bands, whether they're known or not, they're more open to just asking general help from anybody.
It's a very good point, and I actually talked about that with my tattoo artist the other day. He was watching a band on Twitch, which a lot of bands are doing now, also to raise funds, and it was one of his favorite bands, and he's like, he's keeping all the sessions small, and he's inviting us to play with him. And then they started talking on Instagram, and he was like, the vocalist was like super down to have me tattoo him, and he was like, they were like having like everyday conversations, and it was a relatively big band too, and it's just, I find it's brought in bands and their fans closer together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like, it's funny that you mentioned something like that because so the Main, which is one of my favorite bands, as you can see, they've got this kind of fan club thing, exclusive thing, since the beginning of the year. And some of the guys, they'll live stream on that. So either they'll just do like a chatting thing, or one of them, I think he does like cooking once a week with his girlfriend on the live stream. Nice. And so one of the guys, he was talking about playing Mario Kart. And next thing I know, I was on a group chat on Instagram with one of the guys from the Main to play Mario Kart almost weekly.
That's so cool.
Which is crazy.
Awesome. For sure.
I hope you beat him.
I don't think I've ever beat him. I think I beat him twice. Our stats are something like 2 against 50.
Okay.
Something like
that.
You
have to practice a little bit more.
Yeah, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. I thought I was good, but he's pretty good.
But regarding like the social media communication, did you work with Ben that only books via social media?
No, a lot of it comes through word of mouth from local bands, and then for the touring artists, it's I did my part in reaching out to a lot of booking agencies, and there's also some booking agencies that have come through me, or there's also, it's happened before where other promoters have been like, oh, hey Gabe, the show is not really in my genre, and they hit me up, they're like, do you want to take the show over for me? And which I love. I've gotten to book some really great pop punk bands. Actually, one of the promoters in Montreal is one of the biggest, and he gets a lot of pop punk offers, and it's not really his style. So if the show's not going to do like fantastic without local support or stuff like that, or if he doesn't know who to contact and who to put on it, he'll usually come to me, which was awesome. That's a really great way to book new bands. I was very grateful for that. So yeah, it's a lot of really communication either with other promoters and doing my research, and I put together a little press kit with everything I do, and I put Danny Worsnop on the cover, the photography that I took at the show.
That's good. You use what you most proud of.
Exactly. So I sent that out to a bunch of agents, and I usually do that. I usually do a round of that every 6-7 months.
Okay. And so I'm curious, how many, so there must be a lot of smaller ones, a lot of bigger ones, but overall, how many booking companies are there in Montreal?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Let's say in the pop punk, rock, emo, metal, that scene.
In that genre, I'd say 3 or 4.
Okay.
I mean, there's some that, right. There's some that it really ranges. Like I know there's maybe about 3 that really do pop punk. One of which being me. So there's only maybe 2 others that do pop punk. As for like metal, I know there's a lot for metal. For like post-hardcore and emo and all that, again, it's more around the 2-3 mark. But just overall promoter-wise, I'd say there's at least 10 relatively well-known promoters, and then a handful of smaller startups.
Okay, that's still pretty extensive.
For sure, that's actually one of the promoters.
Right? Yeah. So I when it came out of my mouth, I was like, wait a second. Was it that one of the promoters that used to book a lot? I didn't know. I wasn't sure if they were still doing it or not.
Yeah, they're still going actually. In
really?
I don't know if you listen to the band Belmont.
I've heard
Bearings.
of them, but
it's in the pop punk genre, and actually I did co-production with Extensive last summer for that show.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So they're still going, and they do a lot of the biggest like metal, hardcore, post-hardcore, and all that, like Amity Affliction, Census Fail, all that stuff. Because
do booking companies and booking agents and stuff like that, how long is the lifespan? Like if you're not, one of the big ones.
A lot of people give up really quick. Right. To give you an idea, a lot of shows unfortunately lose money, especially if you're paying bands, especially when you're paying local bands a decent amount. Just a good venue is $200-300, and then you have the touring band, another $200-$500, and then any gear, if you have any riders, like supplying them with water or hotels, another couple hundred. Right. So it comes out to a lot. So a lot of people don't necessarily realize that when they start up, especially because they usually start obviously with just local bands, which is normal. Right. And you don't have all those costs, and then you start doing more and more, and then you realize, wow, shit, this is not sustainable. Like if you don't have the extra income to push that, it's really tough to keep it going. And a lot of people ask me like, oh, if you're losing money, why do you keep doing it? And I mean, obviously I don't lose money on every show, or else I would never do it. But it's just, I tell them it's like any business. If I were to open a restaurant, I'd have to invest in a space. I'd have to invest in equipment. I'd have to, order the ingredients. I'd have to do all that. So it's just my investment into the company when I lose money. If I think the show is worth it, I won't mind losing money on it.
But hearing your response, that's funny because you talk about way more stuff than musical stuff. Like you said, like hotel, and probably you bring them to restaurant and stuff like that in between, and like you're really a man of all trades.
I try to be. I mean, it's important, right? Especially like I mentioned, things are so expensive. So when I can take care of things myself, I'll try to. Like all the graphic design is done by me, and if I can supply things for bands myself, I'll always do it.
Like, I'm very surprised that when you mentioned the hotel, because I did not know that was kind of is it usually the booking company's responsibility, or is that just something that you've decided to do because it makes it easier for them?
It depends on the size of the artist. Like when you're paying smaller touring bands, it's usually not part of the deal. But when you start booking bigger bands, you don't have to book them like a 5-star hotel or anything, but they'll usually request, and you can fight it. You can always say, I can't do this. Like, this can't be part of the deal. It's just not reasonable for me. So there's always some leeway and some negotiation, but a lot of the time stuff like that, like a small nearby hotel room with a parking lot for their van will be requested, cases of water and stage towels, and pay their food, and sometimes a case of beer.
So
that's great.
Yeah.
It's not too much.
No.
No,
Like,
exactly.
Food and beer I wasn't surprised with, but I had no idea at all about the hotel part.
Yeah, it's not super common when you're starting out with smaller bands, but as you start going more and more, you start realizing that more bands want that stuff, and it adds up. So, you just do your research, you find hotels in the area that offer the best prices near the venues you work at. One actually great thing about Piranha Bar is that they would supply beer for the bands.
Really?
And they would supply a pitcher of beer for the bands and a discount at the restaurant downstairs. So it would be a big help financially.
And I'm guessing you also you start to know which areas are sketchy, where there's more likely of a break-in into the van or stuff like that, right?
Exactly.
I've heard
a lot of that, unfortunately.
Yep, I've heard horror stories about that. And speaking of horror stories, I think Francois, you can bring up the next question.
I want to hear a story that everything went, and I just learned a word here. Ari?
Awry.
Sorry, because I wrote a wall, but sorry. That make you laugh now, because I'm guessing that's when you think about it now, it's more funny than when it's happened.
For sure. There's not a ton, but there's two that really stand out. But the one I'll talk about actually kind of relates to the most memorable booking story with Danny Worsnop. So like I mentioned, there was the 3 dates booked. There was Montreal, Toronto, and then Quebec City. The morning of Montreal, I was super stoked. I checked the ticket count. The show was almost already sold out. I'm like, sweet, people will come at the door. It's going to sell out. It's going to be awesome. I got a call from Danny in the morning saying that he didn't have the right paperwork or something. And he's like, I'm not going to make my flight. He's I'm not going to make it to the Montreal show. So I spent like hours, and actually I called the guy from Extensive and I'm like, I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm like, he doesn't have what he needs. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, he was just coming with like a guitar case. I don't know why he needs all this stuff.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, send them this, fill out this, do this. So I did everything I could. And he was just like, I'm not going to make it.
Oh no.
I don't know the story behind it. I don't know if it was true. I realized also that it was American Thanksgiving the night before. So I don't know if he was just like partying, which is fine, whatever.
Just woke up in the morning.
Yeah, that I know he did. He told me about that. But he was like, no worries, I'm going to catch the flight right after. And I was like, okay, perfect. And when he got to the airport, he called me there and he's like, I can't make it. And I was like, fuck. So we had to reschedule. Well, we had to cancel the Montreal date. I had to tell the venue like an hour before that they had to refund all the tickets. So we had to scrap that. That was like the date that had the most tickets sold, the one I was most excited for. So that was really bad. And we did Toronto and Quebec City as scheduled, but Quebec City, he's like, why don't we just do a show while I'm still here? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, can you do a show Monday, like tomorrow? And I was like, I can try.
What?
You've been in the industry how long? Like how do you not understand that that's not how it works? It's not that easy. That's what I would have told him.
We talked about it, and I told him, like, look, it's going to be tough, but I'm like, I'll see what I can do. So as the shows are going on, I'm like hiding backstage. I'm just like on my computer the whole time, on my phone, messaging venues, messaging bands, messaging whatever I could. Piranha Bar again, popular topics. Piranha Bar bailed me out, offered me the venue. They're like, it's a Monday night. We have nothing going on. Take it for free. We understand what you're going through. So I got that. And then as we were driving back, I had a buddy driving in the front. I was in the back tethering like my cell internet to my laptop, messaging artists and being like, can you play a show tomorrow? Can you play a show tomorrow? I'm like, you can keep as much of the money as you want. I don't care. I'm like, I just need you to bring out a crowd. And, while I'm doing that, I'm like, okay, I have everything booked. I'm like, I have 12 hours to like launch this, promote it, and get people out.
Wow.
So we did the show. We did the show on Monday. obviously it wasn't as good as it could have been.
Right.
But we still managed to get about 100 people out on a Monday night last minute.
Wow.
But
So
still,
Like
that's
12 hours.
yeah,
no,
that's
exactly.
good.
So it was a hell of a nightmare, but it was a good experience. Danny was super like grateful for it and very appreciative. He texted me
I hope
after,
so.
like, yeah, he texted me after. I let him know, like, is everything good? You have everything? All the payments went through. Blah, blah, we confirmed everything. I paid for his Ubers and his food and all that. I'm like, you got everything you need? He's like, yep. And he's like, I appreciate everything you did. And like, I know it was hard, blah, blah, blah. So, it was nice. It was nice to hear that from someone for sure that I
Right.
looked up to before. And, yeah, that was probably the craziest experience I
That
had and the most
sounds
stressful
crazy.
moment of my life.
And did you manage to get people who were, like who been refunded a couple of days before?
Yeah, a few of them came back. A lot. There was a lot of bad comments in the new event. People being like, "Oh, is it just gonna get canceled again?" and blah blah
No.
blah. So I had a lot of that, unfortunately, which was to be expected. But a lot of them came back. I'd say 50 to 60 of them probably came back, and
Okay.
then the rest were new people that just weren't gonna be there on the Friday that were available on the Monday and came
Right.
out. So
Wow, that's
Regarding that custom problem, customs,
yeah,
good one. Right?
yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Did you have many problems like that? Because I'm more a metalhead, and I always heard about like the guy have restriction or maybe a problem with the laws and stuff like that.
That doesn't happen with my bands, but
Okay, but
I've actually never experienced that before. That's why it was so stressful. Like I've had a lot of the times bands don't even contact me for that stuff, or if they do, they're just like, "Hey, can you just send us a contract and saying that either we're not going to get paid, we just pretend they're not going to get paid, so that they don't have to pay for stuff at the border, or we do it fully and I mark all the information and then they just present that at the border and they normally get through. So it was a first. It was a first for me, and especially now that they weren't just driving, he was flying in for those shows.
right.
So I guess that makes a difference as well. But it was the first time, so I was just like super stressed, and it hasn't
Must
happened to
have
me
been.
since either. But it's yeah, I was freaking out.
And was this more towards the beginning of when you just started your company? Was it more towards the middle, or where
It
were you in?
was. It was about 2 years in. I've been doing Outbreak since about 2015, and I did this in 2019, I believe.
Okay.
2018 or 2019. So it was 2 to 3 years in.
Okay,
so I
so-
had like a lot of decent experience, but that was still a first for me.
Right.
So yeah.
I think it would have been even more stressful had it happened in the first couple of months or first year, right? Where you're just everything's still kind of new.
For sure. I probably would have been like, oh my God. I probably would have been like, I'm done. I'm never doing this again. I mean, I've had
but
other
now
stuff
you're
for
the guy. Sorry, now you're the guy we will call for that.
Yeah, hopefully. I've had other stuff. Like one time the headlining band, they were driving in and they never even messaged me. They just posted in the event group, hey, our van broke. Can anyone help us out or something? Like
Oh,
they didn't know how
no.
they were going to get there. And I'm like, why did no one contact me? So I had to reach out to the agent and be like, what's going on? What's happening? Like, are they going to make it? And it was another big show. And I was like, what am I doing? Am I refunding people? Like, they made it in the end. So that was great, but it was a little stressful also.
Right. Oh, wow. Yeah, because there's a lot of things, especially I guess shows in the winter with snowstorms. That must be a little bit more stressful if a band's driving in from Toronto and there's a big storm in between.
Yeah, I've had some smaller bands cancel, and understandably so, right? They're not
Right.
getting paid a big amount to be in the city, and it's not worth risking their
Right.
lives for a small show.
Right. So I think that about sums up everything that we had planned. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I'd just like to thank you guys for inviting me to the show, and it's been great to talk to you about it and relive some of these memories, and hopefully I'll get back to booking shows soon, and I would definitely love to see you guys out there.
Yeah, well, like I said, I miss being part of the crowd, so you might.
Awesome.
We will be there for sure when everything
Love
goes
it.
back.
Perfect.
So this was Sparkling Harmonies. We're your hosts, Lily.
François?
And today we had a special guest. Gabe. I wasn't sure if you were going to say your name or not. Sorry, we did practice this part.
That's fine.
So I learned a lot. I think, Francois, you also learned a few things.
Me too.
So we hope that this was interesting for you, our listeners, and you will hear us again next week. Bye.
Bye.